Alright, so in today's project, what we're going to be going over is a 775 socket motherboard upgrade to a 771 CPU. Now, the primary difference between the 775 socket motherboards is that they take desktop grade processors, notably the Q series for the quad cores, such as like Q6700, Q66, and so on. And also the Core 2 Duos, and even going down to the lower Pentium dual cores and Celerons. And what we're going to do is, because of the cost of a Q grade processor, which is still somewhat high, on the used market, using eBay, Craigslist, whatever your flavor of used computer part shopping is. What you can do is you can actually take a much higher end Xeon processor from what you have in your system currently and upgrade it, but it does entail a few modifications. So one of the things that you're going to see is that the dies of the CPU are very similar, but you're going to notice, with the CPU sitting the same way, that the little notches, and I'll try to zoom in very well on these. For example, one right here, this is a Pentium dual core here, and one at the top here, the little half moon cutouts. They are on the top left and bottom left. And on the Xeon processor, this is an X5460. Your half moon cutouts, which technically they're named keys because the CPU is keyed to match the socket, are at the top left and the top right. So you probably assume, okay, well, something has to be modified in order to get this to fit in, because Intel designed this to be keyed a certain way. So what you can do is you can take the actual CPU socket itself, and if we pop this guy open, you can kind of take a peek here and see where I've already made the modifications. I'll actually turn the light on here so you can see a bit better. So where it was keyed down at the bottom left there has been shaved, and on the opposite side it's been shaved as well, and I'll zoom in right there. So you want to be very, very careful in doing so, and the reason being is you can easily damage these pins. For as long as I've been working on computers, I've never damaged pins on a motherboard. However, I do see it being a common occurrence, and always see used motherboards for sale with bent pins and things of that sort, and always hear some horror stories of people trying to RMA a motherboard and it being denied because the end user bent the pins as part of the install, and usually it's fairly simple. You just drop the processor in gently, and you're ready to go. But doing a modification like this, obviously you're going to avoid any warranties on the motherboard because you're physically modifying the socket. But if all goes well, it will be worth it. Now, in order to get this modification to work, there's a bit more than just the shaving of the actual socket template itself on the outer edges. The CPU is very, very, very similar if you were to flip these guys over. However, there are some subtle differences, and there's actually one physical modification that you need to make to the bottom side of the CPU itself. And what it is it's an actual circuit board change. So there is a specific circuit board that you have to purchase, and as you can see, it's very small. There's not much to it. But what it does is it's a very integral part of this modification. Let me see if I can zoom in so you can get a better idea. What it does is it'll actually shift 2 pins over. All of the other holes that are popped out of this particular circuit board are so that way the pins on the motherboard side can pass through those holes and still hit the original destination on the processor itself. Now, this little guy has some two-sided tape on the top and bottom that you can see here. And once you peel that off and position it on the actual processor itself, you can see there's a little arrow here, so it kind of matches up with the bottom arrow here on the bottom side of the processor. This is essentially going to go something like this if we zoom in here and try to match it up. So it's basically going to go like that when it comes time to actually pop this guy on. Once the pins are modified on the CPU, then what you can do is you can pop it in the original direction that the original CPU was in. Typically, if the CPU was in this way, right, with say like the notch cut out towards this bottom side, well, the Xeon CPU is going to go in the same way, and since you've cut the notches out, you won't have any issues with it fitting in that way. And that's what allows you to actually run the 771 CPU in the 775 board. Now, the reason behind doing this modification, primarily for myself, is the cost. This X5460 cost $15 shipped, which is extremely cheap for a server-grade processor. This happens to be a quad-core, and if you look at, you can kind of see some of the specs on it. Compared to the Pentium dual-core. The Pentium dual-core was obviously a dual-core processor, but 2.2 gig with 1 WAG, 800 megahertz. The Xeon 5460 is 3.16 gigahertz, 12 megs cache, and 1333 megahertz. So it's a huge upgrade for the price, and you can kind of revive some of these systems that aren't necessarily out of date, but don't warrant spending the money on a Q series processor used for the, say, 50 to 80 bucks that they go for. For $15 and a little bit of modification, so long as you have steady hands, you can get yourself in business with a server upgrade, server grade upgrade. So what I'm going to be doing is performing this modification here and getting this board booted up and tested out. Now, there are some motherboards that do not work with this modification. You do want to see if anyone has had issues with your particular board. I do know from what I've read is that Intel branded boards seem to be problematic when trying to do this modification. And it makes sense. Intel's, let's say, tolerances might be a little bit tighter than some of the generic third-party motherboard manufacturers. But typically, so long as the board supports some of the higher-end Q series processors from the desktop side of things, it'll usually support the Xeon upgrade as well. So stay tuned for the next part where we get this guy all booted up.